August. Water safety continues to be a critical issue in New Zealand, especially for our Pacific population. Of the 104 drownings in New Zealand in 2017, 88 were preventable. Water Safety New Zealand have opened their annual funding round for water safety, education and research this week, looking to broaden the reach of Water Skills for Life and fund research to fill knowledge gaps on New Zealand's drowning problem. And joining us now is Water Safety NZ CEO Jonty Mills to talk more on this. Welcome to the show this morning, and great to have you with us this morning, Jonty.
Yes, good morning, Brian, and good morning, listeners, and thanks for the opportunity.
Jonty, let's ask, how important is it that we involve the community in the process of, coming up with strategies and ideas around drowning prevention?
Oh, look, it's crucial that we get community buy-in. I mean, drowning prevention in this country is a national problem, so it affects all New Zealanders and communities and families particularly, and I think it also reflects the unique differences of different regions around the country in relation to drowning and water-based activities. And I use Waikato as an example, where it's all about the river versus other regions. So it's really important to get families involved at the grassroots level, taking an interest and a care about this, as well as communities and the local authorities that represent those regions. So, yeah, really, really important that the community get involved. It's a national problem, as I said.
Jonty, New Zealand, notoriously bad stats in terms of numbers of drownings. How are we faring currently this year, compared to previous years?
Yeah, that's right. You're spot on there, Brian. We do, unfortunately, towards the top end of the preventable drowning toll in the developed world. And so far this year, in 2017, there have been 29 preventable drownings, and that's comparable to last year. There were about 30 at the same time last year. So it is comparable. Certainly Pacific people and Maori particularly are overrepresented in the drowning toll. I know Maori, for example, represent around about 14% of the population, and yet in 2016 we're about a quarter of all drownings. And there's obviously a close affiliation and connection to the water and kamoana and things like that. So we're about comparable to last year, and I always say that one preventable drowning is one too many.
Jonty, if we're focusing on Maori and Pacific in particular, and disproportionately high representation in the numbers of drownings, are we looking at a specific sort of education for these particular communities at some stage in the future?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question, and I think education applies to all New Zealanders, regardless of community groups, but particularly with Maori, Pacific Islanders, new immigrants, for example. These are community groups that we need to get to through their own communities, and we're putting some plans and strategies in place to work with Maori and Pacific people that empowers them to take the ownership in their own communities and then deliver water safety plans. So we're certainly very, very supportive of high-risk groups, particularly if you look at the drowning stats, and so therefore need to be a real focus for us.
Jonty, when it comes to water safety, of course, education is key. Are we getting younger Kiwis, New Zealanders keen to learn about how to be safe around water?
Yeah, we really certainly do need to, and I think education is the key, and it starts at grassroots level. And sadly, more and more kids are coming out of the education system without just broad foundational water safety skills. We've got the advent of all the school pools closing, the barriers of cost and transport and access to other facilities. So it does mean, sadly, that a lot more kids in 2016, the New Zealand Council of Educational Research surveyed all the primary schools in New Zealand, and there were about 2,500 of those, and only about a quarter were delivering what's classified as a minimal or an adequate level of aquatic education. So a real concern for us in terms of long-term drowning prevention. So it's where about 70% of our focus is. And last year, really excitedly, the Warehouse got on board and got behind aquatic education in this country, and we have a program called Water Skills for Life, which goes right to the heart of drowning prevention and teaches 5 to 13-year-olds water skills competencies and also awareness and the ability to act if they get themselves into trouble, but also make wise decisions around water. So it's certainly most of our focus, and I think that's where it starts with education. It's great to have the Warehouse on board supporting that initiative to enable us to get to more kids.
I mean, I remember growing up as a youngster in Wellington, it was compulsory, and the certificates, the water safety certificates that they used to give out, but sad to hear that.
Yeah, that's right. And I grew up in Wellington too, Brian, and exactly the same. I know there's a lot of pressure on schools these days. We'd like to see water safety education more mandated in the curriculum. It's not currently. There is an expectation that schools do deliver a certain level of aquatic education, but certainly the evidence shows that that's not necessarily happening across the board in New Zealand, and that's acknowledging, of course, that schools do have a lot of other priorities and a lot of pressures on them, so it's not criticism of the schools.
Jonty, we've talked about funding. So the funding program working a bit differently this year. Can you give us more details around that?
Yeah, sure. Look, last year we distributed around about $1.6 million across a lot of initiatives and programs that aimed at drowning prevention and bring down the drowning toll. There is a real focus on education, as I said, and that was Water Skills for Life, our program, but we also need to focus on other high-risk groups and activities and environments, and we talked about Maori and Pacific people. But this year we're also ring-fencing a separate fund for research and really trying to be a little bit more innovative. The traditional research versus the research we're really looking to fund is what we call applied research, which is that research that goes to the real heart of why people make decisions that they do around water in the first place. And I'll talk about young Kiwi males specifically, who don't tend to think about consequences, take a lot of risks, don't like being told what to do, and don't necessarily make wise decisions. And the reason we're doing that and making it a separate research fund is that most drownings occur because of bad decisions. Now, it's really important first to have the skills and competencies to be able to swim and enjoy the water and get yourself out of trouble if you do get into trouble. But actually most drownings are occurring because of decision making.
Jonty, so with regards to this separate fund applied research, reflective of how much work we still have to do in lowering the number of drownings, preventable drownings.
Absolutely, Brian, and the as I said before, the drowning toll is still towards the top end and in the developed world, and it's plateaued over the last 10 years, so it's not coming down. Now we've got a growing population, and obviously a changing population, very diverse population. If you look at immigration, etc., so we've got really high participation rates in this country across a whole lot of activities and environments. So it certainly is reflective of how much work we need to do. And, we need support from communities, from both central and local government. And we're having really positive and engaging conversations with those groups to ensure that we can widen our initiatives and support.
Jonty, you've mentioned a few times we're sort of like at the top end. How do we fare compared to, say, other countries, per capita?
Yeah, well, like I say, we're towards the top end. It fluctuates year to year, but we've been anywhere between around 8, 9, 10 within the developed world, OECD countries. Look, we're an island nation. It's part of who we are as Kiwis. We all play in the water in one way, shape or form. We don't want to stop that. We're not the fun police at all, but we want people to come home safely to their families at the end of the day. We've got quite treacherous waters versus most other parts of in the world. Our waters are quite cold. We're a coastal nation. We've got a lot of inland waterways, rivers, which in 2016 accounted for around about a third of all preventable drownings. So we've got quite a unforgiving environment, and at the same time really, really high participation. It's part of who we are as Kiwis, as you know, Brian.
And Jonty, finally, details about how people can apply.
Yeah, look, sure. The easiest way is to go to our website and all the information, our prospectus. We're really funding specifically to certain criteria and priorities. So go to www.watersafety.org.nz and you'll find everything you need to know there.
Water Safety New Zealand CEO Jonty Mills, thank you so much, and always a pleasure to talk with you, and all the very best to you and the team and the ongoing great work you do. Thank you so much, Jonty.